yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. You let me know when you can see that on the on your thing, and then we can get started. I'll just set up the last remaining bits here. Because I'm going to need to get into this. Okay, that's touch sensitive. And got a little pencil brush.
Oh, you're live.
Oh, I am live. Okay. Okay. Are there people here? Or?
Yeah. Crafty, Apocalyptic Moth.
Nice to see you guys. Thank you very much.
Is anyone else tuning in with us? Joining us? Crafty says, ahoy.
Hello.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Hi, guys. As I said in a few things, there's obviously not been a Monster Monday today, but we're going to do this instead, and then I'm going to take a little bit of time off. A lot of people have asked for drawing tutorials or how I draw or whatever, which I'm very happy to provide, but it's not really a very cognitive process when I draw. I've been drawing pretty much every day since I was maybe 5, constantly. It's been the majority form of my entertainment, and therefore it's somewhat, although very practiced, it's more of an intuitive thing for me, so I don't really totally know what I'm doing. It just seems to generally work. So I am going to teach you how I go about drawing. This may not be a right way to go about drawing, and also I don't particularly know how to express the things that I'm going through when I'm drawing to you. So basically I'm going to draw, and then I'm going to ask Yvonne, my wife, who will be reading out your questions and things like that. I'm going to ask Yvonne and through her, you guys, what you want to see, what you want to learn, and how, if I'm going too fast or too slow or whatever. But basically, start off by grabbing yourself a pen and some paper, or pencil and some paper, or get on your design tablet in your computer if that's how you operate. I draw in a very analog fashion. I'm not a digital painter, as it were. I see a lot of people who do sort of like textured brushes and lots of clipping masks and all this kind of stuff. I draw in a very, very analog style because I learned to draw with a pencil and paper, and that's where I'm most comfortable, and I essentially simulate that experience using a computer. So rather than trying to use the computer as its own, painting software, So what I have some of Kyle Webster's brushes. Kyle Webster is a Photoshop brush designer who partnered with Adobe a few years ago, and when you sign up to Photoshop you get a lot of his brushes. There's one in particular that I really like that is very pencil based, again because I'm trying to simulate the experience of drawing with a pencil, and see if there's anything going on. Yeah, we've still got the buffering thing. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. Let's see.
No, sorry.
Oh, good. Okay. Crumbs. Oh, good. She's a classy lady. Unable to connect to chat. Please try again later. Yeah. I wonder if.
Oh, it's back.
Is it back?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That's good.
Oh.
Is it back?
Yeah, looks like, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Back.
Right, yeah.
We've got Jurassic Show,
Nice.
Jarek,
Yep.
and Todd J.
Okay, cool.
Says hello, love your work.
Nice to see you guys. Thank you very much for joining us. I need to stop looking at Yvonne whenever you guys say hi. I'm looking at you, not her phone. Right, okay. So before we were interrupted by Wi-Fi issues, the thing for me is imagining the human form as interconnected 3D parts, okay, and they're just tactile objects that you can rotate in any direction. And that's the best way I can think to imagine something, to picture something in your head before you start drawing it. So to me, like, as if you had this in like 3ds Max, or you had like, you know, this little like thumbprint shape. Just imagine it like an acorn or something that you can literally pick up and rotate in any capacity. And then we're going to make marks on that little acorn-like shape, and you can kind of observe where you're turning that, if that makes sense. It's all about picturing where those things stay relative to the object that you're moving. Okay, so which is why I then always draw this little guy, which is my kind of marker for in 3D space for you know, loosely where something's looking, but it's just like, oh look, that's the front of the face. This thing I'm looking at here is facing in this direction, and that so if I were to rotate it, is the angle at which it's looking would now be, oh look, now it's looking over here. You know, that kind of thing. This shape is something that has become fairly intuitive to me because I like drawing people, but the average sort of face shape was explained to me by drawing a ball first. If the whole chin thing is something that is troublesome to you, drawing a ball or a circle, again, just imagine that this is, always have it in your head that this is something that you can rotate. Drawing your little marker thing, and so the eyes here would come, you know, you'd have this little shallow area here. I don't know how much that is, like 1/5 of that ball or something like that. And then you draw basically a little, I guess in your head, like a little, the end of a lemon, the end of American football or something like that you just lodge on the bottom of this ball. And that's kind of roughly what you're going for. And that's because I grew up watching anime and reading manga and stuff like that. And I you know, used that shape as how to learn to draw, basically, but that is not even remotely anatomically correct. So what you want to do, because if someone had a chin like this, they would be stabbing people beneath them, and every time they looked down they would be like jagging into their collarbones, is to sort of flatten that off and round it off, okay, a little bit more, which is how I end up with my kind of thumb shape. But if coming up with the kind of oblong thumb thing is easier for you, then just do that. Save yourself the trouble and save yourself some steps. In the end, drawing's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be something that you can be proud of. And if you think about it too much, if you worry about it too much, you're going to be, you know. Sometimes people use thought to not participate in life. That whole thing. Just participate in the drawing, and don't think about it too much. So we've got our little thumb shape, and this is going to be our head. And I'm going to draw my sort of classic 45-degree angle that I am most comfortable with, because I think that's going to be the easiest, right? So this is my standard human. Are we drawing a female person or a male person?
Go male.
Okay.
I think that's your stronger suit.
Okay, so what I next do, I'm just realizing kind of like instinctively, I would next go for the eyebrows, but you probably need to know where the eyes are before you start doing eyebrows. I just have kind of like an instinctive idea of where they would go. So my pen has just stopped working. There we go. Ooh, yeah, I'm getting a bit lag here. So your eyes are literally going to be little spheres, and these, it doesn't really matter what they look like right now. Don't be scared at this stage to just draw hundreds of little lines. You don't need to do a precise line for any reason at this stage. In fact, I generally don't tend to do it even when I'm doing my line work stage, which is sloppy and not a good practice as an artist apparently, but it's what I do and you guys seem to like it, so I'm happy with it. Either way, we're going to draw two eyes, which, what are we going to say is, how would I describe that? It's a sausage's worth on either side of this cross. Help me, guys. What would...
It is 5 eyes wide.
This person went to art school. The head is five eyes wide.
But when you're turning it to the side like that, then I guess you're kind of using your judgment. So the width between your two eyes is the same as an eye.
Okay, there you go. Perfectly. Perfect. Actually, you know what? Yeah, that works totally fine. There's room for a third eye there. That's what we'll call it. The two eyes are an eye's width apart, right? That's way better than two sausages. And then over the top, we're going to draw some eyebrows. Now, eyebrows are a very particular kind of arch. You may want to start off, if this is your eye straight on, you may want to start off doing this kind of thing, like a little Wi-Fi symbol almost of an eyebrow that comes out like this. And that's okay to get your kind of basic eyebrow shape, but it's not 100% there. So that's how that's a Wi-Fi symbol above the eye is a good marker for how much eyebrow you should be drawing. But the eyebrow is broken up for the most part. There are lots of very complicated muscles in the face, but it's generally speaking broken up into two distinct parts. There's a kind of I guess like a front part here. I've never really studied anatomy. I need to, but there's this front part here that just ends just before halfway in this arch, if that makes sense. And then there's a bit more of a kind of blocky shape that starts just after halfway. They don't quite come in the middle there, but essentially what that means is you have this break just about halfway through, and so that means that your arch, even if the arch of the eyebrow is mostly curved, that complete curve is slightly unnatural looking, and it falls into what we call the uncanny valley, something that looks like it's trying to be human but isn't. So what you want to do is start off with a bit of an arch, and then there's almost like a peak here, you see, and then that curves back round. So it's like you're starting a curve and then you forget what you're doing, and then there's a break and you do the curve again. This is a really good way of getting a lot of depth out of your eyebrows, because if you imagine that this is these two are 3D shapes again, then you can start to make expressions later on. Don't worry, we're not going to do anything too complicated today. You can start making expressions by moving various parts of these eyebrows, but maintaining that they connect. So you could have a bit of a surprise look here, or you could have a bit more of a frown, or that's maybe shock when the back is arched like that. But this back part.
Could you, your face cam part is covering this part of the screen.
Oh, is it? Right, okay.
So do you want to move
your
sure. screen a bit?
Yeah. I'll move the whole bit over here.
We've got Dakota's joining us. Yusuf says, today I learned one eye equals two sausages. And Lee Chamberlain says, I've always wondered why Macs are recommended for stuff like editing and art. Is there any real benefit? Personally, I've just commented that I think because a lot of design studios use Macs, have the software for Macs, designers then have them at home.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes a design industry standard that there's no reason why you couldn't use a Windows computer to design in. It's just obviously the software doesn't work on both. The same license doesn't work on both.
Which is really frustrating. I use a Mac because weirdly enough, this is gonna sound really dumb, but I use a Mac because I kind of hate them. I think so. They're really good pieces of kit. They look really lovely, and they're so stripped back that there's nothing I can do on this laptop except work. I'm not going to be playing any games. I'm not going to be, doing any of my D&D prep or whatever. This is my art machine, and I can write stuff on it if I want to. But it feels very much like there's nothing I can do on this thing except work. So that's why I use a Mac. Basically, it seems simplified. But I use a PC for when I'm gaming and stuff, just because I can tinker with it if I want to. So yeah, that was me massively over-explaining eyebrows. Am I going into too much depth, or am I going into is this okay so far?
This is good from my point of view.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you can have some comments coming in. Dakota would like some foliage drawing tutorials, for instance, a shrub. So maybe that's for the end or another time.
Who said that? Sorry?
Dakota.
Oh, okay, right, okay. Sorry, I thought that was Colby Monroe sneaking in with another request for a sentient shrub. You're all good.
Yorick says, what do you think of the music that he sent you?
Oh, I've not actually had a chance to listen to it yet, but I'll have a listen after this. It's been a busy day, Yorick, but thank you for sending me music.
Oh, Crafty likes my accent.
Oh, cool, nice. He is Serbian as well, so I think you'd like his accent. It's cool. Right, okay, so between these 2 points, we're going to, and I never really do this, but we're going to imagine that there's a line here. And this is going to intersect the eyes just below halfway, I'd say, into these spheres. And we're going to just imagine that this goes all the way around the head. I've drawn a little curve here because we're imagining that these are spheres, like Homer Simpson style, popping out of the head, okay? And this is where, you know, this little part of your eye here, this is where it's an evolutionary feature that is basically, if you've ever seen animals that have an extra lens or lid across their eye, this kind of transparent lid that closes sideways across the eye to protect them from water. Whatever we were before we ended up being human, we had one of those things, but over time it's become less and less useful. So the only remnant of it is this little section right here, this little dent that essentially helps to turn your eyelids into sort of like the shape of a lemon. So we've got this kind of, we've got the eye here. I'm going to do like a magnifying thing. And you got that little, I don't know what the like scientific term for it is, but the little knobbly bit. That is going to be, if we draw a line from here to the other side of the eye, like if you imagine like the eye is Earth and it's kind of tilted on its axis, that's the kind of angle that you're going for here. And we are going to put the other end, or maybe not quite that much, but yeah, put the other side of our eyelid here, okay? So you're going to draw around that little tiny blob bit, and you're going to try and make like an exaggerated shape of a lemon until it reaches this point here, okay? Over the top of this ball. Okay? Yeah, and look at that, you have just drawn your first eye. So within that you can imagine that there is an iris, the coloured part of your eye, and within that still is the pupil. Okay? Now you have a beautifully drawn eyelid here, and what you can do is to make this look more like an eyelid, because I see a lot of people doing the like Jessica Rabbit eyelid, which looks like that and is haunting to look at on a real human, or you know, this kind of stuff. Eyelids are not a universal thing. They don't always look the same on every person, but we're drawing a kind of stock human, right? So draw like another line's width above your little knobbly bit of your eye. Please someone find out what that's actually called, because I'm going to just call it the knobbly bit this whole time.
What, this?
Yeah, that little bit.
What's tear duct?
Is that the tear duct?
Yeah.
I thought the tear duct was like in you further.
No, because
okay.
the reason I'm pretty sure of that anyway is because my uncle had an artificial one.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's
because my aunt, do you remember the old-fashioned hoovers with the brushes underneath?
No.
She ripped his tear duct out with the hoover. Hope no one's squeamish.
No. No. Take care of your tear duct and don't get it near hoovers. What?
Yeah. So once you're done with eyes, maybe we've got a couple of requests for beastie legs. So the sort of backwards bird legs that you do.
Okay.
A couple of people would like to see how you do that.
Okay.
Colby Monroe's joined us, and Dakota Wright says, "One of these days I'll get my awakened shrub."
Okay. So just to finish off with the eye here, the eyelid is going to be drawing a line from the tear duct as if there is another line's width in between, and you're going to just slope it onto the top of that ball that you drew, and the same with the bottom there. You're going to draw a bottom lid just by connecting it to that bottom part of the circle, okay? And that's it. You've drawn an eye. I generally draw like a single sort of line here when I'm sketching, just to indicate like, hey, this is where crow's feet would start if you wanted to draw crow's feet on this person and make that make the signs of their age a little bit more apparent. But yeah, so should I carry on drawing a person, or should I skip to draw like what people individually want me to draw?
I think if you finish up the eye, and then maybe do the leg and come back to the face, and if people have other requests, we can
cool.
do that. Apparently, yes, the bell says the sort of additional blinky thing that you're talking about, the sort of Men in Black thing.
Oh yeah.
Is a necessitating membrane. I hope I said that right.
There we go. I'll stick that in a month.
is here as well.
Right. Nice to see you guys. So we've had a lot of requests for bird legs, is it?
Yeah, so let me just...
The kind of backwards facing, kind of like cat and all this kind of like tabaxi legs and all this kind of stuff.
Beastie legs / backwards facing animal legs that birds have. So like I guess the inverted knees?
Yeah, okay, cool. So generally speaking, we'll get to this at some point, but this is super simplified. Your average legs, right? We all have like, well, it's very ableist. We presumably, largely in our population, have legs that feature in this capacity. So we have. I'm just going to speed through this. I'm not going to talk about it too much. But I actually need all these shapes in order to tell me how to draw legs. Okay, so we have the waist and hip area. I'm trying to find a very polite way of saying it, because if I knew my anatomy, I would call it that. Right. Pelvis, that's the word, pelvis. Pelvis, groin, what have you. Okay, we have thigh to knee area, which I just imagine in my head is a very like thick tube, and then we have a little ball here to connect that joint in the knee, and then we have your long Pringles tube of a kind of shin to ankle, which is usually slightly longer, and then you have the ball joint here, the ball of the foot, which literally should be drawn as a ball when you're sketching, and then some little cone shapes for the majority of the rest of your feet, and that includes things like your toes and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so that's generally what we're dealing with when we're dealing with human legs. Okay, that is, don't worry, I'm going to do bird legs and all this kind of stuff in much more depth, but in order to think about what we're doing differently, we need to have some idea of how a normal leg would join, and it's good to have that kind of there while we do this. So if you start with the same sort of pelvis region, I'm going to draw a kind of mum and dad from Cow and Chicken right now, with the bottom half of the torso here. Okay, so you have your pants, you have a floating set of pants that are going to be what we start with. Okay, that's it, done, we can all go home.
Thunder Bart says draw the hind animal leg sticking right out from under the human head.
No, because we're not trying to give ourselves nightmares. Yeah, right, okay. So I'm going to draw so I usually start mine here because it implies that there's a ball joint here, but if you want to kind of imagine, if you need that extra bit, then feel free to put that in. For the most part, it appears as if there's an extra joint in these legs, but there's actually not, and that's where most people struggle with this, because you're trying to find like the second knee, but there's not one. Okay, it took me a while to get as well. Do not worry, this is a complicated thing to figure out. Okay, so you have the same thigh. Okay, usually almost exactly the same length, although it's doing less work in these creatures, so it can be a little bit smaller. Okay, so you got your same tube. So this is part one. Actually, you know what? This is, screw it. Sorry. This, your floating pants, this is part one. Okay, we've got part two is your Pringles tube. Okay, part three is the knee.
I think there's a lot of reference to this being very short pants. I guess it's underpants.
Oh yeah, because you're American. Do they call them underpants? Or do they call them shorts?
What do you call what you wear under your pants?
Yeah, the tighty whities. If you're an American, I guess boxers. Yeah, but they're not kind of boxers. They don't have like that. Yeah.
Underpants, I think.
Is it underpants? Okay. Yeah.
Someone will tell us.
In the nation that gave you your language, we call them pants. All right, they're tighty whities. And then
briefs. Or trunks.
Briefs or trunk. Okay, you have your trunks or briefs. Okay, you get this little basketball here, which is the knee joint. Okay, and then the leg, this kind of part 4, this more Smarties tube, the slightly thinner tube here, needs to then go back on itself in order to support the body, because these creatures are kind of like spring-loaded, and the body kind of goes like, if you have the head here and the body here, this is going to be the, oh no, you can't see any of that because my face is going to be in the way of that. So let me move that over here. There you go. So these creatures, you always need to be thinking about what things are being supported here. So you have the pelvis here, and it's got its spine. It's got a huge amount of weight on top of this thing. So it's going to have a leg that goes like this, and then because it's got this kind of spring-loadedness, it needs to have the knee go back again, like almost in a number 4, so that it's kind of supporting itself again, so that there is the pressure is distributed. Otherwise, it would just collapse. Okay, and then it can sort of rejoin this normal stance. Okay, so you're going to make this number 4 by making the Smarties tube thing here come back on itself. Okay, this is your number 4. And then you get another little ball joint here. This is going to be a tennis ball. This is number 5. Okay, and that is the exact same joint here. This is the ankle, believe it or not. It looks like a second knee. People are always looking for that second knee, but it's an ankle. And this is where it gets really, really crazy. Okay, so there's like, where's this extra missing piece of leg? It's the foot. This extra part of the body here is actually the foot, to us at least, and it's just really, really long. Okay, which is why sometimes, you know, if we have 5 fingers, sometimes there's this extra little bit here, like on some cats and other animals like that. There's an extra little like claw or something like that here, because this is literally has a very similar structure to the bones in our hand. We have an enormous amount of bones in our hand, and that is because these hands are, in our evolutionary history, were supposed to be much longer, but we use a lot more sort of close-up stuff, so they've sort of compressed, and I imagine a lot of these bones will fuse in our evolutionary future. So yeah, it's very weird. Like the ball of the foot should be kind of here, if that makes sense.
Crafty says a simple way to think about it is to picture yourself standing on your toes.
Yeah, you're standing on your tiptoes with really freaky feet, and then you have the toes would start here, basically. Okay, for whatever kind of creature that you're dealing with, and that's why there's usually some pads or something like that on a dog, and specifically, you guys were asking for birds, was it? Would have 3 or 4 toes. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. Which would just start basically here. Okay, so yeah, that's the very basics of a kind of like bird thing. They have the exact same number of joints as a human leg. So yeah, we've got the main body of the foot here is 6, which is just here. Okay.
David Kleiner is saying it's like how bat wings are actually hands with disproportional long fingers. People never think of that.
Absolutely.
I didn't realise until we were at a zoo on our honeymoon and you pointed that out, and it just blew my mind.
It was weird, yeah, like, because I used to struggle with drawing dragons and stuff, because the bat wings, I'll just be like, how do I do these weird, like, umbrellas that they have attached to their backs? And then when you start thinking about the claw on the top is their thumb, and then all the other bones are their fingers, suddenly the anatomy of it just like, of course that makes sense. So yeah. So
okay. I think if you want to go back to the face,
let me know if that's
for you to continue with the face.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. This is quite good. I'm realizing how much like stuff I actually know that I didn't know that I'd like learned, if that makes sense, from observation, which is cool. I'm pleased. So going back to the head. Where we left it, we were drawing these eyes here. So I'm just going to catch the main body of this sketch up here with the same details. So you can see that I'm following as if this orb is 3-dimensional. I'm just going to draw that here. Okay. And I'm going to draw our little eyes looking at us there. Okay. There we go.
Oh my god, Apocalyptic Moth says, imagine a bat but without the web, and just a creature with horrifying, trickling fingers.
Oh my god, I think that's an eye actually.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Was it?
They only have one very long, creepy finger. If all of their fingers were like that, it'd be...
That's horrifying.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yes, Val just says no.
Yeah, no thank you, I'm out. Okay. So basically you can draw a few extra like more defined lines to signify where these eyelids are. You don't want to sort of like draw over the whole thing, otherwise it'll look like they're wearing spectacles. But you're just drawing like where you put lines wherever a shadow might fall, or just some sort to give an indication of where something is. Okay.
So to just zoom in a little bit on the face, just so it takes up a bit more proportion of the screen.
Yeah, of course. Is that okay?
Just wait for it to catch up. It should be good. We've got Harry and Gillian are listening.
Oh,
hi guys.
Nice to see you guys. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi Ada, if you're listening.
Sorry,
David Kleiner says, now imagine those bat hands gripping things with said fingers. That would be an interesting creature.
It would.
So that would be a good homebrew creature.
I like this.
If you really want
something
to
that was
people.
formerly flying but now is not. That's terrifying. Okay, so next up I draw two things almost simultaneously, and then I let my interest in the drawing take me where I want to draw next. So I will generally sort of make an imaginary, what kind of shape is this going to turn out to be? An imaginary kind of acorn shape, I guess, here is for the base of the nose. A shape which joins your eyebrows. This is not something you're going to draw in your line work layer, or when you like come over to draw this in ink after you've penciled it in. You may not even have to draw it at all. I often don't, but it's something that I imagine is there because it helps with the curvature of the nose. And similarly, from the very base of this eyebrow, where you finish the eyebrow, just draw like one of the McDonald's golden arches. You're going to draw a little like the beginnings of an M here, okay? Like, you know, just one, but you're just going to draw one of those kind of curving around the side of the head. And that is our indicator for where the temple is, the sort of thinnest part of your skull, and that will sort of help you later on when you're trying to draw a hairline. From here, carrying on this line from the edge of the eyelids, imagine this line going further along, and this is where you're going to draw your ear, essentially. Okay. The edge of this eyelid, where the eyelids meet, is kind of, I don't know the name for ear anatomy, but you know this this little sort of, I don't have too much hair now actually. This little kind of thimble of cartilage. I don't know what you want to call it. That little bit, right? That is essentially just a covering for the hole into your bloody brain. Yeah, into your ear flap. This is your ear flap, okay? So that's an indicator where that's going to start, okay? And around that, you can draw a reverse letter C, okay? Or a letter C if you're drawing this face from the other angle, okay? And that's kind of all you need to know about ears is just, it's a C and then we're going to warp it slightly, okay? So I would recommend looking into what ears actually look like. I kind of do a shorthand version of it, a stylized version of it. I'm not looking for anatomical correctness, just so long as you get the impression that this is an ear. But there are certain things like, you know, if you just left it like that, it would look like cauliflower ear, you know, it would look very strange. But with this little sort of meat thimble drawn, which covers the kind of hole into the ear.
It's an auricular.
The auricular. Oh, this must be someone with a piercing, I guess, who's had their auricular pierced. I don't know. Either way, thank you very much. The auricular. You're going to kind of imagine that there's a curve going straight up here that starts from that point, okay? When you come to do your line work stage, start drawing it only when it's perpendicular to the letter C that you've drawn. But it connects in an imaginary way, okay?
Just to say, Apocalyptic Moth is asking how you draw elvish ears, so perhaps you could.
Yeah, of course, I can. Yeah, totally.
And someone else, Nicholas is saying, Can you try drawing avian / feathered wings? They're more difficult than they look, and tentacles are hard too. So maybe that's for another video.
Yeah, I think those are two of my absolute hated things on earth. So I might do them in a separate video. But the avian wings are really interesting. They're just human arms, basically, with a lot of extra growth, but they follow the exact same joints as a human arm. Really, really interesting. But I'm still getting to grips with that. Either way, going to finish off this ear fairly quickly. This line, essentially, you can curve a background until it almost reaches, like there's another little curve almost here, you can see, right? And that's going to be the beginnings of our earlobe. So what we can do is make that a bit more exaggerated, depending on how you want your character's earlobe to look. They can obviously be attached, or they can be, as I generally mostly see, detached earlobes like this, where there's like a little bit of skin. Okay, like this, like a little, you're doing like a little curve and then a flick, okay? Like imagine Dark Elf armor with that kind of like recurve thing that they always do, but you're doing it much less exaggerated, okay? Right, so then all I tend to do is there's a lot of features of the ear, but you can get across this as an ear really well by just doing, I think, 2 more bits. You're going to draw a letter Y, okay? You're going to draw a letter Y like this, basically, and you're going to slot that into your ear. So, but you're going to draw the reverse of it. So imagine that Y is there. We're going to draw like this kind of a shape, if that makes sense. That kind of thing, okay? So I'm going to put the top of my Y about here, and then I'm going to draw the next part just here, and that will not go past the earlobe. You can draw some extra features if you think that's going to make your ear stand out a little bit more, but you don't need to. At that point you have drawn an ear, and that is totally fine, and that'll do you for most ears. You can vary those as much or as little as you like, depending on the type of character that you want to draw. Now in terms of elvish ears, where are they different? Okay, so you'll notice whenever I draw an elf, I start off by drawing a human ear. Okay, I draw that same C shape. One really important thing that I think not enough illustrators the same ears over and over again, and I think just like noses and chins, and well, in particular noses, because they're another part of our body that is made of cartilage. They can be such a huge expression of who someone is. Do they angle downwards? Do they angle in a curve upwards? Are they straight out like a knife? Are they long? Are they short? Although I like to do a kind of this is a half elf and this is a regular elf, that kind of thing. I like to make that distinction. Putting angles and different shapes in your elf ears is a really easy way to make sure that your elf is unique and personal, and I think it's a real shame when people choose to have a particular way to do an elf. That said, I'm going to show you kind of the standard stock elf that I have in my head, which I then vary to give them more personality. So I start off by sketching in a human ear, and then I just literally lengthen it. Okay, so I draw in my little human ear that we've just done, right? And then I will draw in, let's say there's a little bit of a curve after I've just done that whole spiel, a little dagger point. Okay, it's going to be slightly curved, right? So just imagine your dagger goes down like this, and then we're going to reconnect it to the earlobe. Okay, because elves have earlobes too. Maybe they don't in your world, I don't know. So you can see it's kind of, it's a C with a point, but we're going to make sure that that point is curved because this is an organic shape. When people are being insulting to elves and they call them knife ears as an insult, that is supposed to be an oversimplification of what they are. This is not what they actually look like. Okay, it's an organic feature. Okay. So now we have all this extra flesh, and what we need to do is just make it look more ear-like. So we're going to attach the various features that we've already drawn. So this connecty bit, this kind of like region around the ear here, we are going to draw it all the way up to the edge, And this is where you can add a bit more personality. You can have your edge come right across, and then there's a little flap, or you can have it sort of bend back on itself, more like a human ear, and things like that. Is entirely up to you, and that's usually one of the ways, again, that I tend to make my elf ears seem a little bit different from elf to elf. Then this little Y, you're going to want to start up here instead. You're going to just bend it, basically, and distort it a little bit. Get a few more elfy shapes in here, and bring this Y round here, and curve it back in. Okay. You can then add an extra little shape here to fill out some of the room. Essentially, you want to just make sure that there's some of these organic shapes, because again, there's no right way to do elves. They're mythical creatures. Okay. But that's how I would draw an elf ear separately or differently to a human ear. Essentially just add a knife and stretch those shapes that you've already drawn in a human ear. So I hope that helps you. Next up, I think it's time to get on with the nose.
Someone, I think it was David, has said that you would ever cover your clothing design, your textile design, like your costumes.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I think is one for another video, but I think that's something that personally I admire in your work, that there's a lot of detailing that goes into the textiles.
I usually feel like I'm winging it when I'm doing the clothes for this.
Oh, it's quite impressive. Yeah. So I would sit and do hours of research into like different types of clothing before doing something like that, but you're just off the top of the dome.
I tend to think of adventurers as adventurers who have adventured. So, you know, their clothes have become tattered and damaged and stuff over time, and I'm really not a fan of people wearing entirely symmetrical clothes. I find that makes a more interesting silhouette when you draw a character who's not completely symmetrical. So I will generally just give them, like, you know, one long sleeve, one short sleeve, and all this kind of stuff, because I get bored drawing the same thing over and over again. So, you know, even down to micro level.
Perhaps you could cover a bit of hair in this tutorial called Beam and Roses. It's one of the few things that I've never really been able to wrap my brain around. I'm in the same boat as you, Colby. No
worries. Hair, it's a way of thinking about it again, and it's just, it's a hard thing to get, but hopefully once I show you, it'll seem a lot easier. I had a lot of, again, I grew up kind of trying to trace manga images and anime images and stuff like that, so I grew up with the whole like spike thing, as this is what hair is, and it's just, no, definitely not. Also means that you end up spending a lot of money on hair gel when you're a teenager. So all you need to know for hair is that it's going to sound really dumb and patronizing. I'm really sorry if it is, but just picture hair as a group of follicles. I know that sounds really patronizing, and I'm sorry, but what that means is that it curves, and it follows rules of gravity, which means it has very reliable curves, but it's a fiber, so it bends rather than lying entirely flat. Okay, so the hairline is, thankfully we've drawn our temple and we've drawn our eyebrows, so that gives us a really good idea for where the hairline is going to appear. Generally speaking, what I will imagine in my head is this little shape here, like a little, let's draw a big old beholder eye or something like that right on the very top of this guy's head. Okay, this circle, which I would say, judging by actual going to art school standards now, is probably another eye above the center. Okay, so you have like your sort of third eye here, and then a fourth. That's where the circle starts. Okay, that's your hairline. That's your character's hairline. Okay, from here, probably not quite halfway. Maybe like a 1/3 of the way into this circle, right? So if we imagine this is a ball again, right? Maybe halfway on a ball, or a third of the way on a circle. Here, anyway, is what I'm trying to get at. Is where you would draw what are we going to call that? Like a reverse R. Okay, so we're going to connect that to the temple, right? So we have this shape here, and then we're going to draw a little R on both sides, right? Then, because hairlines are weird, you're going to draw like a finger's width away from the eyebrow, is going to be a kind of a curve here. It's not, you're not actually going to draw this line here that I've drawn, but I'm just trying to exaggerate that line for reference, okay? Which is going to connect quite conveniently to the top of the ear. And then a sideburn will kind of come down from there, not quite where this ends, but just maybe another finger behind it. This is getting kind of complicated. I know, I'm sorry about that. But then you have like a finger's width of sideburn hair, which ends just around, I mean, where do you like your sideburn to end when the barber's done with your hair? Around that, what was the fancy name for that again? The little fleshy bulb bit before you had a name. Either way, that's what you're dealing with, okay? One of the things that people, and myself included in the past, struggle with the most when it comes to hair.
Well, I think you're talking about the meat thimble.
The meat thimble, yes, thank you very much.
But it's the auricular.
The auricular, there we go, thank you. So one of the things that people most struggle with when it comes to hair is that they will then start the shape of their hair, the outline of their hair, the silhouette of their hair. They'll start the silhouette of their hair as if it's originating from the skull, which sounds like it should make sense, but in reality it doesn't, okay? Because if we then drew like hair on this guy now, he is going to look kind of scary. He is going to be like a skinhead kind of thing, which I guess is not scary, but like if your hair kind of jags inwards and then you follow that line into the skull, then that means you've kind of cut a divot into this person's skull in order to make room for hair, okay? So the hair itself, you've got to leave room, okay? So we're going to draw an extra, like a helmet on top of this guy, which is where we would get the hair kind of following, okay? And that's kind of your guide for, this is where hair can fit comfortably within my standard human, okay? It's quite a lot further above the skull, because your hair is quite a lot further above your skull.
Your hair's definitely getting a lot further above you.
Yes, D&D, because you're worth it.
You've probably got a good, half head's width again.
Yeah, probably. Mine grows out as well in like a massive kind of afro. If I don't like put, there's a lot of hair clips in the back. Basically, this mullet is not intentional. I did not watch Tiger King and think that's a good idea for how I want to look. But you know, we're all in quarantine, and I'm leaving quarantine with long hair. All right, so you're gonna have to just put up with the awkward phase. So yeah, we've got this little helmet, and again, this guy looks super weird, but we're going to draw a hairstyle on him in a second, right? This is the kind of standard hairline, but if you want to do a widow's peak, just remember that it'll meet the middle point of this head here. I have a widow's peak, this little kind of the Dracula M, and that's going to be basically your drawing. You know, I said a little R here. You're just going to connect that R all the way to the very center.
Bobby says, how did none of my art teachers ever tell me that it's not that complicated? I feel exactly the same. I think a lot of artists learn more from copying and replicating like manga and other illustrators' work than they do from their art teachers.
Yeah, totally. yeah, totally. The next and most vital thing, if I could, right, okay, so I figured this out from watching Fairly Odd Parents. Okay, this is going to sound really super strange, right? But you know, in Fairly Odd Parents, if you've not watched the TV show, it's fun. Do it. The Cosmo and Wanda have floating crowns above their heads, right? And they tend to appear here, right? Always imagine where the crown of the head is, and imagine it as a literal floating crown above your head, right? Because that is where all hair starts. So for this guy, it appears around the back, and we can imagine, I'm going to draw a little 3D crown here. Don't worry, you don't have to actually draw the crown. I'm just doing this for your reference. But if I'm drawing this guy from the back, right? Again, you don't have to draw them from the back. This is, you know, don't keep up with me here, right? We've got our ear here, we've got our chin. Here's an eyebrow, here's a nose, here's a face, okay? So we've got our guy here. Here's his temple for reference, all right? It's an exaggerated temple, but he's looking this way, okay? The crown of the head is not directly in the center. It's usually a little bit to the back, and it's also usually a little bit offside. Okay, so the crown of the head on this guy, I'm going to say is about here. Everyone actually has a different one. It's just how your skull forms when you're born. It's super interesting, and that is where we are going to start our hair. So the hairline, we know what the hairline looks like on the front of this guy. Again, we're getting a bit more complicated here, but I'm going to draw just what we've drawn here, but as a 3D angle. And this is the crown of the head, super exaggerated in this massive dot, right? So now you can split up the hair into different blocks, originating, all connecting as modular features from this element of hair. And that is going to tell you how the hair falls. So anything south of this point, all the hairs are going to point downwards. Okay? Anything, every hair points away from the crown. So anything on the side of this point is going to point outwards. Anything on top is going to point forwards, even if you then curl it backwards, as I think I probably have here, I guess. So my hair, when it's straight, you can see will point downwards, and then I will curl it myself back up. But the hair itself is not doing that. Your hairs are all little arrows that point directly away from the crown of the head. Okay?
You've got everyone feeling the top of their head.
Yeah.
Or their crown.
Yeah, but so when you do it like that, that's when if you want to do anime and manga and stuff like that, you want to do this crazy hair, doesn't matter. No matter how simplified the drawing is, an artist always knows the very fundamentals of what they're doing, and as a result, they are following these rules even if it doesn't appear like they are, okay? And that's why all these jags and stuff like that always look like they make sense on an anime character, maybe not Yu-Gi-Oh, you know what I mean? But they just imagine tiny little arrows always pointing away from the
They might
sky.
defy gravity, but they're generally going in the same direction.
Yeah, magical logic, we'll call it, right, okay? So from here we have hairs that are all doing this, okay? And you can have a side parting, which is going to influence all this kind of stuff. What kind of hairstyle should we give this guy? Afro is going to be not a good lesson, but like...
We're back in the Johnny Cash quiff and some burns.
Okay, sounds good. Right. So, in that sense, right, just draw little curved lines that follow the general rules that we've just applied. So they're little arrows that go straight, and then we're going to curl them back. Okay?
Yeah, I think you're definitely going to have to do a follow-up video to show some of the things. We've got a request for Medusa here.
Okay.
And... for an insectoid human race, how would you draw a hand that could grip something? Okay. So I think maybe once you've done the basics of the human, you could start the next video with your human drawing and then start adapting.
Yeah, sounds good.
Various limbs to suit people's requests.
Sounds good.
That may be quite a fun way of doing it. Oh, people are really wanting a mohawk. Sorry, I sent them down the Johnny Cash route, guys.
That's all right. No worries. I can draw you a very separate mohawk, right? So. There we go. We've drawn our hair now. I hope that was informative. I don't know a simpler way of talking about it, but if elements of what I'm saying, again, I'm not an art teacher, so I don't know how to intrinsically convey the innate things that I have picked up over the years and the things that I've practiced. So if I'm explaining something too quickly or not in a way that you understand, please make sure to let me know in the comments, and I can try and if there's specifics of what I'm talking about that aren't making sense, let me know, because you're probably not the only person. Yeah, so I was going to draw a little quick mohawk for you. Alright, so here we go. Hairline. Oh, Bella's wanting a pat. Hi Bella, how you doing?
Each one's fed actually.
Oh, does she? Right, okay.
Some food out for her.
Okay. There you go. No worries. There you go. Got a little mohawk for you. Right, okay. So next on our creepy little puppet man, who is looking increasingly more terrifying, we're going to draw a nose. And how are we going to do this? It's easiest to draw what you're most familiar with. So I grew up drawing Caucasian noses, so that's what I'm going to teach you today, and then you can edit those things if that makes sense. So your standard Caucasian nose, roughly speaking.
You draw quite Roman noses, really.
I do draw quite Roman noses. I would say, like, if you...
People tend to draw their own features to start off with, don't they?
Definitely. Because I learnt drawing loads. You know, when I was in school, and I had an art project in my GCSEs or something like that. I'd like the person that you can most readily get photos of to pose for things that you want to do is yourself. So you know, you end up drawing a lot of yourself. I generally draw, like, if you imagine, I guess what I'm kind of picturing is like, okay, so you've got a Mars bar, right? And
sausages and Mars bars are the essential.
I'm a fat guy, I know food, alright? Like, I know, like so you're gonna get several pounds of butter. Right, so right. You have a Mars bar, right? And you're going to partially submerge the top of this Mars bar. I see a lot of people...
Can you move that up a wee bit on the screen?
Yeah, of course. Like here? Yeah? Yeah, is that right? So you're going to partially submerge it in the face. I see a lot of people who tell people to draw the Doctor Doom nose, right? Like a pyramid or something like that. And... that might work. It's never worked for me. So again, I'm trying to show you how I draw things. So that's, you know, I don't use the Doctor Doom triangle for a nose, right? I draw a little Mars bar, and like if the face is made of something soft, you just compress that Mars bar at the top in. This end you compress in so it's slightly at an angle. Okay, so what we're going to end up with, and I will take you through the steps of this. Don't worry. Is that this is the bottom of the nose, okay? So you end up with this kind of shape, right? I'm going to try not to draw too much of it, but you see what I mean, right? So this is the top of the Mars bar, and I've drawn this little cube shape here, okay? So what we're going to draw to tell us to ink later, or to put in our line work later, is a little curve. You can see that we drew this kind of massive acorn shape here. We're going to connect in a curve around the eye to our depressed Mars bar. Again, this is why, look, my brother's an art teacher, I'm not. I'm sure he does not use language like depressed Mars bars and acorns. And then we're going to curve the end of our Mars bar round. Okay, and it's not how I would finish a nose, but you have kind of the basics of a nose there, right? So keep that in mind. Keep that shape in mind, right? We're gonna do this kind of shape, right? Because what I would do then is, I'm realizing now what I do is I imagine a big teardrop here at the end. Okay, so you have the ball shape, and then you have a kind of rounded off. Almost like the inverse of a head, like the kind of thumb shape that I did for the original head, turn it upside down and stick it on the end of the nose, right? You're going to follow the round of that curve until you get to about here, okay? And this is when you draw the nostrils. Now, you're not going to draw the nostrils as big independent things. I'm going to draw you a kind of sketch of where a nostril might go here, okay? And I'm drawing, what am I drawing? I'm drawing... You've kind of drawn a distorted M, I guess. You're drawing an N, okay? Like N for Neanderthal. N for... why is Neanderthal the first word that comes to my head? I think, what's a normal word with N? No, N for no. You're going to draw an N here, okay? Imaginary N, right? And that's what you've got. And then you're going to turn it into a 3D shape. So you've got this kind of upside down plant pot. You can see why I've not done drawing tutorials before, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to cut into this with the nostril. Okay, we're going to do this little kind of relaxed C, just a little curve. Okay.
Sorry, groups joined us after work and see them back. What did I miss? So basically, it's a lot of depressed Mars bars and sausages that make up the face.
I only know food terms for everything, as it turns out.
And then a couple of questions. Nicholas asks, how are you on drawing gas masks?
Gas masks, yeah, they're fine. Would you like me to draw one now?
I think if you continue with what you're doing just now, I think maybe we should do
like
some special features, so like that could come under the sort of armour and clothing video.
Yeah. Let's see.
You're still on the screen as if you're in.
Let's just see. Well, Instagram's loaded for me now. Yeah, I think we might be live.
Oh.
Just let me know, guys. Yeah. I think we're back up. Just let me know.
Oh, we're back. We're back. Yeah, sorry, that was my phone. It was.
Was it?
Well, no. I think we were out, but my phone also needed to be refreshed.
Right. Okay. Cool. No worries.
We're back.
Nice one. Thank you. Sorry, we're having internet trouble. We've been having internet trouble since the lockdown, basically. I don't know if it's been throttled because we're all here using it, or if it's, I don't know.
Gremlins.
Yeah, could be gremlins. It's metal. But yeah, so it's been troubling. Either way, have we had any comments or anything like that through?
Yeah, I can't saying everyone's got issues. Just we're all pretty impressed that Colby has 3 concurrent games.
That's mental.
During quarantine. That's like
good
amazing.
Yeah.
I'd love to play 3 sessions a week, although I don't think I could keep track of 3 different characters. And Larry said it's been 23 years since their last session.
Seriously?
Far too long, Larry. You need to find yourself a roll 20 group and play online.
Definitely. We actually rolled up our characters for our next session, for our first session in a new campaign the other day, and that was so uplifting and so cheer-inducing that I would definitely recommend getting something done. I'm really bad at computers in general, so getting to grips with Roll20 was quite difficult. But I think we're still going to try and muddle through.
As a player, it's quite simple. I think maybe as the DM, it's slightly more difficult for you, but certainly as a player, it's been quite straightforward. Kobe says there's too many idiots knocking down 5G towers. That's wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so shall we pick up?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just drawing a nostril. I think I showed you guys how to just like angle this. Basically, we're just making a little like lazy curve here, and then we're going to draw. Most of the way through this nostril, we're going to bring the curve back round, and we're not going to necessarily connect it there. You can connect it if you want to, but you don't have to. Sometimes not connecting that line actually looks better for the nose. Whatever you think works. There, I think it looks better when I connect it this time. You're also going to draw a little bump on this side because everyone has 2 nostrils, okay? But you're not going to intersect this line. Following this, noses connect to your lips. I have a beard, so I'm a bad example. But your nose, like I'm going to just draw it. Sorry, Mars bar nose. I'm going to remove you, and Mohawk guy. Sorry to see you go, but I need some space. So. We've just drawn our nose, right? This is me drawing a very, very quick nose. Okay. Noses connect to your lips. And again, it's something that usually gets missed out, but it's a good way of judging where the lips start. So if you draw the curve of the nose, and then you draw a little line going down, there's like almost like the depression of a fingerprint in at the bottom, the center of your nose, which is one of the many features. You'll notice it as well if someone has a little dimple in their chin. This is where 2 halves of your face in the womb fuse together, because that is messed up, and that's how we are made. We are made in 2 separate pieces, like a mold, and are compressed together and fuse. And this little dimple is one of the things that is a sign of that. So you have this little dimple underneath, which you can draw by drawing a little curved line, and then it curves up a bit like a paperclip, I would say. Okay, you don't have to draw that. A lot of artists don't, but for me personally, I think it adds something to the face, and also it tells me, it's like writing a letter to myself. This is where the mouth starts. Okay, so then I will draw my little widow's peak. The little your lips are like an M, like if you stretch out an M, right? Yeah, like a bow. So you're going to stretch out an M, and then you're going to curve those lines, because no one has a completely unless they've had some really bad plastic surgery, no one has a very, very angular face. So that's not the bottom lip, that's just me drawing that same line again, but with some curves.
Got some questions. Jan Shivik says, since you made unicorns and nightmares, will you make a video about Pegasus?
Yeah, I'm certain that I will at some point. If they're not already on my to-draw list, I'll definitely put them on there for you.
And apocalyptic moth, I'm not quite sure. How do you recommend drawing very dry bone? Like literally like a skeleton?
Oh yeah, like no flesh on bones. This is gonna really suck to say, but you're gonna have to just look at some anatomy textbooks. I can show you the very, very basics. Should I carry on with the face, or should I?
We'll finish the face today,
okay.
But
cool. But learning to draw individual bones, like drawing a skeleton, helps you immensely when it comes to drawing the flesh on top. A lot of what I'm doing when I draw is imagining the body in layers. So I am imagining the bones underneath, and then the muscles on top of that, and the skin draped over the top of that. It really, really helps to know, or at least have an idea of what those things look like when you're drawing, to know kind of rough spacing and how something might look in 3 dimensions. So I would definitely recommend looking that stuff up. As it is though, the lips, I'm going to draw this kind of curved M, this bow shape once again. Now, you can draw that bow however long you want to give yourself a guide, but the mouth ends, the kind of like everyone, this kind of like chubby cheeks, and it also helps to draw when someone's getting older. There's a line that falls directly from your nose, from the very, very edge of your nose down to your chin, because there are stretched muscles here. This is what your cheeks are. There's a cheekbone, and there are layers and layers of muscle. Your jaw has to do so much work all the time, because we talk, because we chew, all this kind of stuff. This is why you have lots and lots of muscles here. And these muscles fall into 2 large flanks, which when you're older end up becoming sort of jowls, if that makes sense, because they've been so overworked, they've been so used, and then they accumulate a little bit of fat, and there's some the skin sags a little bit when you get older. But it's only because there's so much use in the face. We use it constantly, okay? So these 2 flanks of muscle intersect the edges of the mouth. The mouth can never go past these 2 lines, okay? So if you imagine a kind of Homer Simpson face, actually is a really good way of doing it, that starts from the very edge of the nostril here. I'm going to really exaggerate these. This is going to make this person look really, really old. But if you imagine kind of like like this kind of a shape, starting from like a little oval, starting from the corners of the nose, okay? And your mouth can never go further than this, which tells you something really good, because if you want your mouth to go further than this, how do I make someone smile and all this kind of stuff? It tells you that you can increase the smile, but that also means that there needs to be an angle, a bow in this muscle tendon, and that in this muscle group, and that is how you get cheeks. This is where your cheeks go. They shouldn't be like just random things that are placed there to make it look like you have cheeks. You have cheeks for a reason. So we're going to draw a very, very flat expression on our guy. I'm going to remove these little cheek lines here. I'm going to remove all this extra padding and what have you that I've drawn here. Yeah.
Yorick says that he would like to learn to draw ogres, as his tend to look kind of the same.
Okay.
So I think that's again another video.
Yeah, definitely.
To do ogres and variations of ogre.
Yeah, as I say, basically what I do with every single drawing, whether I'm drawing something completely absurd or if I'm just drawing like some variation on a human, is that I am drawing this stock human and then I am altering it every single time. So I will show you how I do that in future videos, but the important thing is you need to know, you don't need to know, I need to know, but if you want to draw it using the way that I draw, then knowing a stock human that you can then alter is how I go about that, okay? So you're going to make a very, very loose indication of where these muscles go. You're going to draw your little Cupid's bow, you're going to draw your little curved M that reaches the very end of it. And you never even have to actually like ink in this line. You can just draw the little indication of it. It's sometimes just enough. The depending on how old or young you want this person to be. So just underneath this line here, this line doesn't indicate any lip in particular, rather it indicates the absence of. This is the slit in the mouth. And what I will tend to do is that I will colour in the lips, because if you draw lips on top of this, it looks too feminine to be a guy, and then when you draw it on a woman, it looks just weirdly outlined. So I tend to just ignore it anyway. I do a reverse Kim Possible lip, and I just draw the bottom lip, if that makes sense, and then I will colour in those lips independently, right? So if you imagine, again, we're going to go back to food references, we're going to put a finger or a sausage directly underneath this line. Okay, we're going to put that just along here, but the sausage or the finger or whatever you want to have can't just lay flat, because again, just like everything else, it is a muscle. It is pulled tight by various features of the face. So this flat sausage that we have just laying here is actually distorted and pulled to the corners of the mouth. So we want to make this into a curve. So rather than making this like I see a lot of people drawing mouths like this, you know, this kind of thing, or you know, like this. If you just think about it as like a clay sausage or a clay finger that you have here, and then you are pulling, you're kneading the same amount of material, you're not going over that line, and then you can draw the very edges of this, pulling into the corners, and then you never go over the top with the lip. I'm going to just remove a tiny bit of that there, because I made that kind of finger too long. And then following that, I draw basically a chin is just made out of, the chin is just where a lot of this kind of material, a lot of this muscle tissue ends up connecting. It's just usually, I mean, you can feel his chin, you can feel that there is just bone there essentially. It's a very, very tough bit of your body. There's not a huge amount of muscle. There's not much work going on the chin, but there's a lot of work going on around the chin. So it feels like a very, very hard part, and that is usually basically like the ball of your foot, an elbow. Like it's a piece of bone that is roughly like a little ball, not quite, but you know. And from there we can connect to the rest of the face, and we're starting to get a face shape.
Just to say, Jonathan Foster's joined in. Unfortunately, he's missed the beginning of the stream, but he's with us now. Oh no,
nice to see you. Thanks for joining us, Jonathan. So we have kind of the basics of a chin here. We have the majority of a face. It's starting to look pretty face-like, okay? The next step for me is to go over here and back to the ear, because what this guy is sorely lacking, whereas he can definitely pull some really strong expressions in his face, he does not have any muscles that allow him to open his jaw yet. So we need to actually put in the bone of the jaw. Your jaw is, this is where we're going to go to anatomy class very briefly. If we do your chin and we have your teeth roughly, your jaw is going to look like, what are we going to go with here? What's the analogy? I don't know. I can't even think of something that looks like a jaw. It's like a bear trap kind of shape. It's like if you've got a wrench here or something. I don't know. But it's a very strong. Your jaws, no matter if someone has a lot of padding around their face, like I've got a very chubby face, I've got a round face, I've got a beard and all this kind of stuff. So you're not going to see a super defined jawline on me, but that doesn't mean that the jawbone has changed in any capacity. So you always need to draw, or at least imagine in your head quite strongly that there is a uniform jaw shape. And that connects from this chin. There is no other way around it. It cannot connect to anything else. You can't have like a floating chin unless your person has been very badly hit in the face. So, yeah.
Goop has a metaphor that they picked up for the steps of drawing anatomy. They said, drawing a character is like building a wall. First you start with the structure, i.e. the armature, then the plaster, i.e. musculature,
yeah.
I'm terrible at things. Okay. And once it's dried, you finish with the paint.
Yeah, totally, so absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely the way to think about it.
We're collecting as well your vocabulary for this. But chin ball, meat thimble, hair crown, and depressed Mars bar. Yes. 3 sausages in there, guys.
Yeah. There's been quite a lot of sausage mentioned.
Stretched. sausages.
Okay, so the jaw, if you imagine that there is within the skeleton you have a cheekbone, like I've mentioned here. There's like all these muscles that are kind of going down in this direction, and there's a cheekbone here, okay? And the jaw connects just underneath the cheekbone, right? There's a little ball here, and it connects in that capacity, right? But there's a little cheat to get around having to think about that all the time. And that is just simply, you see where we've drawn the earlobe here. This is one of the reasons why I always draw detached earlobes, aside from the fact that I have them, and thus, you know, drawing what you know. I will draw a little, I'll just draw a straight line, straight down, right here. And then I will connect the jaw to that straight line. And there you go, really, really simple jawline. From the top here, you can also draw a little bit of the cheekbone if your guy has very, very strong muscles here, which comes in almost the exact same shape as an eyebrow. We have the two parts once again. You have the bit that connects to the mouth, and you have the kind of curve here that connects to the cheek. You don't have to draw that particularly strongly. The average person, it's not very well defined, but if you're drawing the kind of like super heroic person, it sometimes works to draw that little cheekbone, and it's always, however much or little you're drawing of this, it's always connecting to the very corner of the mouth in this kind of eyebrow shape. Then all we need to do is draw the mirror image of that on this other side, and that's slightly distorted because we're drawing this at a 45-degree angle. But if you're imagining this in 3 dimensions, then it shouldn't be too much of a stretch to fill in those gaps. Okay. The eye actually comes in at a little dent when you're looking at it side on, so we're going to draw a little bit of the, you know, we're going to sort of not sort of I see a lot of people drawing let's say like this, where you've got the eye and then the face comes in almost to the eye. Although that can look okay, it's not the best, and I would recommend sort of flattening it out into a curve, so you have this kind of a shape rather than this kind of a shape, right? So there's like, try and avoid sharp lines as much as possible. You can choose to put some in, but if you learn to draw without doing sharp lines first, adding them in can be a stylistic choice rather than something that you're relying on. So this cheekbone, I'm going to add a little bit of extra padding to this person's face to just curve that back into the chin so this person doesn't look like they're sucking their cheeks in. And then you have the basics of a face, and all that's left is to connect this hairline, if you're imagining where the hair is, to a neck, which is just going to swoop straight down. We're going to draw a straight line from the middle of the chin, and then you can start drawing the rest of the body, which I'm very happy to take you through at some point. Should I carry on there, or should I take a few requests? Or
well, someone earlier, I'm sorry I don't remember who it was, but suggested like arc tasks, like how do you draw that? And I think since you're drawing the heads,
yep, and talking about jaws and things like that, I think that's a good call. Right, so let me.
Goop says, bit of an odd question, but how would you draw a character without the jaw? Or perhaps a loose jaw, like when you're working with zombies and such.
Totally cool. I actually really like that. So we'll draw a few different jaws. As we did elf ears, we can do orc and zombie jaws, yeah? So I'm going to very quickly draw the basics of an orc.
Could you give that guy an arc task? Or do you need to...
it distorts the face quite a lot.
Right.
So I'm just going to, like, this is going to be seconds, right? So we've got, I'm not going to put too much thought into it. Got an orc face. Okay. Okay. Right, so I've got the nose here coming down. You can draw your orc nose however you want. I like quite a swine-like nose when it comes to an orc, okay? You're still going to draw your little widow's peak, because no matter how tough they are, they still have gentle lips.
Everyone
needs a kiss. Even a savage, ferocious orc.
That's called bow.
What did I call it?
Widow's peak.
Oh, widow's peak. Yeah, widow's peak. The hair. Cupid's bow. You're right. Okay, so you have your sausage lip that's being pulled in at the sides, and once again, no matter what, just to make it realistic, these flanks that I'm talking about, the jowl kind of thing, will come from the nostrils, no matter where you choose to put the nostrils, as I put them quite up quite high.
In a little bit.
Yeah, of course. And then we've got the little ball of the chin. Okay, so we've, yeah.
I don't know if we've cut out or not.
Have we maybe cut out?
Guys, can you let us know if you can still see that? Oh, Goop says, would Oni teeth have a similar distortion to orcs, or would they be
very
more
much
similar to humans?
Very much so. They would have a very similar.
Okay, I think we're still going.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was just a blip.
Cool. So I've drawn the very basics of an orc here, right? So the thing to remember with an orc is I'm going to actually draw the jaw here, generally speaking, right? So we've got the same thing as this guy, exactly the same in every capacity, right? We've underneath this lip here. This is something you're not going to draw. We've got teeth here or thereabouts, and we've got a jaw. Okay, and this connects through muscles to the cheekbones here, which are very pronounced, and so on, right? Okay, he's got a lovely set of gnashes on the top as well, which are going to make the opposite curve. Okay, very simplified skull on the inside, right? Here, I usually draw my tusks. I imagine them coming out from behind the back of the canines, and almost, because they're like boar-like tusks, are protruding from the bone itself, as opposed to being individual digits. Okay, so these tusks are coming up from this point here. However stylized you want them to be, they're going to come up from this point, and this is getting really messy and hard to see. But if you kind of imagine that's where they are on the jaw, then this will help. Okay.
Do you want to change the colour of the pen or something to make it easier to see at this point?
That's a good idea. So let's do
Bright green or something.
Yeah. There you go. Right. So we've got these teeth. So I'm going to redraw a bit of this for that instead. I'm going to redraw this lip. Right, this is the same lip as before, but we have these things protruding from it. So all we've got to do is curve around it. Right, so you've got a tusk, the lip comes along, and then you need to curve around it. Okay, and all that does to the sausage of a lip underneath is that when you get to here as well, you need to draw a bit more of a curve around that too. Okay, so we have our tusk protruding from the bottom. Tusk protruding from the bottom. I just need to make sure that the sausage lip here is just doing that. Perfect. And they look terrifying because that's now very Ronald McDonald, I'm noticing. I'm just going to get rid of some of this lip detail so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Does that make sense? Does that seem like an orc tusk to you? Does that make, you know?
Yeah, I can see that.
And Oni tusks, they're just doing the same thing but from above. What was the other thing? A zombie face?
Yeah,
was
but
that
how
right?
do you do it without the lower half of a jaw?
Totally cool.
So I guess like your blinkers that you did in your... you did a thing on blinkers, didn't you? Your
blinkers?
The guys whose jaws explode when they...
Oh shit, yeah.
Oh, you broke your own rule.
I broke my own rule. I didn't want to swear on this channel.
Not safe for work.
Not safe for work, I know.
Hide your children.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Letting the team down. That video is not actually gone live yet, but that is
spoilers for another video.
Yeah, no, it's all good. That's nearly done, but it'll go up later on. The blinkers.
Yeah, some very cool homebrew from Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Featuring a bunch of guys who get a very severe punishment if they break their contracts.
So I'm going to draw a zombie-ish thing here, just drawing, again, going for the average kind of human shapes, drawing human straight on, pretty much straight on at least.
Colby's calling you an extremely rude boy.
I'm sorry, Colby.
Mouth Josh.
I know.
Well, Steve is choosing to hear the words "oh, I should" instead. So
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. You're right. I think dwarves definitely warrant a video of their own because I think.
Hell yeah.
You have quite.
Yeah,
exaggerated features sometimes on dwarves, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody here who's watching this knows how little I like other species just being variants of humans. I like them to be their own creatures. So, right, okay. So we have the basics of a human head here, yeah? What I'm going to do to make the lower half of the jaw non-existent, in order to make this a bit more zombie-like, I'm going to really accentuate the cheekbones because the flesh is rotting and there's no reason for those muscles to be useful at all, so they will protrude a lot more from skin which is just sagging over the top. So I'm going to write a little letter to myself here and say, let's make sure that we're getting some skull-like features showing through to make this a little bit more creepy. Okay. Now, you can have as much of this top jaw as you like. I tend to, if a jaw is being fully removed, I imagine that the skin would tear alongside it, and as a result I would remove quite a lot of the skin from the top lip as well, but that's just up to you however you want to do it. Importantly, the bottom jaw being non-existent literally just means that we can completely remove all of this. Where it gets grim is that we still have the neck. The neck follows the same rules as if we had a chin here, but nothing is connected, okay? So this is all really about the neck, okay? So this chin is non-existent, but you have to get a little bit interesting with how things work. The tongue is the first thing here, because tongues are actually really long. They are muscles which connect from the very, very base here. You can see when you speak there's a lot of there's an attachment basically to the bottom of your jaw. You can see that it moves. There's a lot of muscles going on here, but also the tongue extends all the way down here pretty much, maybe even a little bit further. So you would have a kind of gaping tongue. If the tongue remains intact, it would be very long, like venom long. It would be pretty disgusting, and you'd have to imagine that it would curve up here as if there's still a connection to the throat, and then it would pull itself back down, but then there would be torn flesh all along here which allows this curve to occur. And furthermore, there would be dangling sinews and muscles, the muscles that were connected to the cheeks here, that would just be flopping around, and you can kind of make these kind of weird tendrils almost that you would go into more detail with. At this point, this is not going to be a neat snap, okay, because without a bottom jaw, your face isn't just, your head isn't separate from your body in any capacity. And I know that sounds really weird and very pedantic, but when you remove a jaw, you're not just removing a jaw. There's no part where the jaw really stops and is separate from other things, so it's going to have an impact on the rest of the whole face. So there's going to be wounding all the way along, the majority of the face, and you might have sort of like the removal of a lot of face up here, which allows you to draw things like teeth and skull and maybe a little bit of muscle tissue up here connecting it all. And this is where you can get very, very gross bits of teeth and things like that. And this would rip all the way down the body. There would be, loose veins and muscle tissue and all this kind of stuff that would be connected up here but hasn't managed to. And if this doesn't get demonetized, I don't know what will. So that is how I would draw a chinless person.
I'm just going to check that it's not my connection here, but I think we might have.
Okay.
Slightly dropped out at the very last second there.
Okay.
But let me just chin back in and see.
I have cactus prickles all through my hand.
Did you touch?
Yeah.
I think the cactus stuff has got all over the Wi-Fi router.
Yeah, it's very sore.
So every time I move it, I get stuff stuck into me.
I'm glad I'm drawing with my right hand and not my left.
Maybe us. It might be my 4G connection that's gone, or it might be that we're not working at the moment.
I think I'm still live. I can't connect. I can't see the chat, weirdly.
Okay.
But I think I've still got video going. Just let us know if you can still hear stuff.
I can't see the chat either.
Is that Myrtle growling?
Yeah.
Do you want to just go and check that she's alright?
Yeah, I'll check on the dog and keep talking for now.
Okay. So yeah, that, I believe it was Colby, is how I draw a chinless person. And from the side, that is going to look like, you're just going to draw your average guy. As you would normally.
I think she's just having a nightmare.
Poor Maxwell. And then draw your neck like normal. Your tongue would kind of protrude out here. And you'd have these loose sort of bits of muscle and stuff.
Oh, yeah, it is still up.
Still up? Still
yeah,
up.
yeah,
Okay,
sorry,
cool.
it was just
Just you?
just me.
No worries. Okay.
Right.
So I'm quite happy to kind of say that's the end of drawing a head. And we can carry on with like the rest of the body next time or something, unless people have any requests that you think are relevant and stuff that you don't think would take too long, because I don't know about you, but I really need some...
Can I just say, I'm not sure if that's public or not, but very kindly Jonathan Foster has donated to you to help fight the demonetization.
Oh,
so there you go.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Your
That's really
mouth,
sweet.
Your potty mouth has not cost you.
Oh,
that's incredibly
really
generous.
kind.
Thank you, Jonathan.
That's really sweet. Thank you very much.
And we've got another.
That's the most I've earned from any video ever.
Sad but true.
Yeah.
No, it's very generous. Ethan says, could I request how to draw a face from a couple of upward perspectives, not straight down?
Of course.
But just show some of the sketch and shortening of that aspect. So I don't know if you want to do that on another video, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I can sort of talk generally about it. So they say upward as if like you're from the ground looking up at someone.
Looking down.
Or are you looking down on someone?
A couple of. Request how to draw a face from a couple of upward perspectives, not straight down. So I think they mean like up.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. So yeah, okay. So this is one of the things that I find hardest to describe, because it requires you to already be able to imagine what something would look like in 3 dimensions. So this is where my kind of language of describing how something would be drawn kind of falls down. I can show you how I do it, and maybe you can help me kind of like by pointing out what I might be doing, or telling me like what am I thinking when I'm doing something. I don't know. So yeah, so this is difficult for me to describe. I will do my best. So what you want to do is imagine a floating camera, and so we have our dude that we just drew, this guy here, who we're going to call Nigel, okay, and Nigel right here has a camera. Let's say the camera is this little orb here, and it's like looking down at him from this sort of an angle, or maybe a little bit higher, okay, maybe it's I don't know.
Steve says, don't get any ideas, Josh swearing left and right for coin.
Yeah. No, that's very that's a good point, but no. So I'm gonna try and draw something like that, maybe a little bit behind, okay? So the thumbprint, like, just imagine this thumbprint, this little bean that we drew for a head shape, and this camera, and you're going to rotate the camera around. Try your best, if you this is one of the things, because this is an instinctive thing for me. I hope you can do it too, but I've heard that this might be just a thing that dyslexic people find easy. So if you're not dyslexic, this might be more difficult for you. I don't know. Either way, the bean shape is going to look something along these lines. It's not quite a circle, it's slightly distorted because you can see a bit of chin. The angle at which someone's looking, going back to that first thing that I drew, looks a bit more like this now. Okay? Does that make sense? So we're going to try and follow the same logic that we did when we were drawing the face from that 45-degree angle, but from above. And again, this is where you as viewers are going to have to tell me to slow down or describe what I'm doing, because I don't particularly know, which is why I'm so hesitant. Maybe I should just get on with it. So, eyebrows would start about here. They are a three-dimensional shape, not just a line, so they would protrude a little bit. The nose, we draw this little acorn bit, once again, between those eyebrows, an eye's width between them, and we draw our little depressed Mars bar going forwards. Okay. From here we have our hairline, which starts around here and comes around here, and we know that our eyes are on this line, so we can draw our ears around here. Because we learned to draw ears as if they had a width to all those lines that we were doing, we can draw the width of those lines from above, and we have that same C shape, you see. We have the cheekbones start to appear, and we have the chin, and that is basically a face. You have the crown of your head. This is the same crown that we had before. Starts here, and all of our hairlines are going out like this, and the neck would start around here. Okay, and this is where our shoulders would be, and we can carry on from there. This is where you get sort of, you need to start drawing the rest of the body, because essentially all the view distance kind of things converge on a central point around where the feet would be. But I'm just trying to draw the head. Okay, so the neck here is going to be almost invisible. We have our sweeping hairline up here. He has this kind of Johnny Cash hair, I think it was, which is going to obscure most of those facial features. Do not be afraid to obscure almost all the facial features if you think they logically would do it. It doesn't matter how hard you worked on them. If they would be obscured, then they would be obscured. You have to, what is it, kill your darlings or whatever it is. You have to not be precious about whatever. I'm not good at metaphors. You know what I mean. So yeah, that's, again, that is how I would draw someone from a different angle. Did that make sense? Is that a thing? Did that? Yeah?
That makes sense. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me know if that didn't, and if you need, you know.
Maybe one more thing before.
Yeah. Okay.
Go.
That sounds good.
So Goop's asking about like the sort of character created through eyes, and generally the distance between eyes and what effect that has on
absolutely
character.
Yeah.
Because I quite like characters with wide set eyes.
Yeah.
And I have this is a bit weird thing. I've got a friend who's got quite wide set eyes and a very balanced sort of heart shaped face thing. So I think a lot of feminine characters tend to have quite doe eyes that's slightly further.
Definitely, and I most of you will know that I draw my elves with a great distance between their eyes, because it makes them seem more deer-like. It's, you know, because prey animals have their eyes towards the sides of their head, and in particular like horses and does and things like that, horses and deer and things like that have this kind of like conical tube where their face would protrude. Adding features that resemble that in a humanoid face make them look more like connected to nature, more elf-like. I think there is actually a chromosomal disorder that people can have. I think there's a very famous YouTuber who has this, and the colloquial term for it is something along the lines of elf-like. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but these people often look very have, you know, it's very striking features, very you know, it's, you know, obviously this is objective, but it looks quite beautiful. It's a really interesting look. So so if we draw our kind of standard face, and you imagine where the eyes would be, okay. Going to draw the eyebrows. He looks very surprised at this situation. Going to draw a general sketch. This is just me going super fast for the rest of the features, but I personally like to draw all the features so I know where everything fits in connection with everything else. Okay.
Steve says there's something alien-esque and unsettling about wide set eyes. Would be good for elves or fae. I think he said this before you started talking about that. Okay. Thinking of satyr,
satyrs maybe.
Satyr from Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Very much that look,
yes,
isn't it?
This is why I draw my elves this way. So I'm gonna just grab these eyes that I've drawn and move them slightly further apart. This is where the uncanny valley comes into play, because if you put them too far apart, this person is going to look bizarre. If you put them too close together, so if you put them not far enough apart, they're going to look human. And if you just manage to find that striking distance, they are going to look ethereal. And that's what you're going for. So I'm just... How much did I move these? Not by much. It really doesn't have to move by much at all. A thing to accentuate this, and when I'm drawing my elves, this is one of the things that I do, rather than having the eyes be something where the lids kind of close in this capacity at a slight angle, I will draw them with quite a steep angle. And this is something, I think it's like when you're trying to draw people with like Chinese, Japanese, Korean kind of angled eyelids, is something that you pick up very quickly, but with a distant set eye, it really adds this kind of beautiful, delicate quality to the face that if you're drawing elves, I would highly recommend. It's not quite, so it's a little bit more steep than that, basically. And without drawing the ears, without making the face look narrow or anything like that, like if you just kind of angled that, look how elf-like that looks. That is very, very cool. This is one of the other reasons why I also draw my elves with jet black eyes, and you can kind of carry those angles along. This is because, again, if you want to make, I said that this tip of the eyelid is where the what did I call it, the little flesh thimble starts for the ear. If you follow that line across, this is where you can get a really good angle for elven ears. And I know I'm kind of going off on a big tangent here. I don't remember what I was even talking about to start off with.
Kobe's just in. It's funny that you say that. Doug Jones, the actor for a lot of creatures in Pan's Labyrinth and a bunch of other movies you've probably seen, has really wide set eyes. So I guess perhaps they're basing the makeup and stuff on his features. And that's probably why they've hired him. I think that would be a good place to start.
I think that's a good call.
We've got lots of ideas from everyone about future videos that you could do. But that's your basics for drawing heads and stuff. That looks very nice. Oh, thank you. I thought you were doing like the end. Like that's all, folks.
That would be a good idea, but no. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've learned something. I hope this made sense. And I'm eager to do more of this kind of stuff in the future if it's useful to you guys and it's something that you would enjoy. As you may or may have not seen in various posts that I've made around the internet, I had a little mental health dip the other day, so I'm going to look after myself. You guys have all been very, very kind in that regard, so I'm going to take a couple of weeks off now. I turn 30 in 2 weeks, I think, as well, so I'm going to kind of coincide with a lead up to my birthday, and I'm going to have just a nice chill out. So you won't see any videos from me for about 2 weeks. Maybe one of those weeks, I don't know. Yvonne is very good at making sure that I relax and I don't work too hard. Maybe during one of those weeks I will prep for my next Monster Monday or a couple of other Monster Mondays or something along those lines, but I'm going to try my best to do absolutely nothing unless you're a patron and I owe you some things. I think I still owe Monster Monday illustrations to a couple of you guys, and 2 of you guys are still owed video chats. So yeah, I will do those, but other than that, I'm not going to work for a week, maybe 2 weeks, but you won't see videos from me for at least 2 weeks is the idea, and after that I'll be back and I'll be doing more live streams like this. There'll be lots more Monster Mondays. I'm actually pretty close to finishing the next kind of couple of Monster Mondays, but yeah, I'm just going to take it easy. But anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. I hope you had a wonderful time tonight. I certainly did, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope this was useful for learning stuff. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.